Number 1. Breakdown. It's actually been really hard getting around to telling this story. For a long time, reading true scary stories online or listening to them on YouTube, I often wondered why anyone would tell the story of something tragic that happened to them that others would look at as entertainment. But finally, I decided to tell it because I realized it's not just about entertainment. It is also a way of helping people who might find themselves in similar situations. My story took place about 10 years ago. My friend Jake and I grew up together. We were best friends for as long as I can remember. We always sat by each other at school. We hanged out during recess. We played video games together. We were very, very close. We even decided to go to the same college together. I thought Jake could have gotten into a much better school than me, but like me, he wanted us to have the experience together. When the time came for us to leave for college, we left a few days before we had to be there and made it into a road trip. We gave ourselves 3 days worth of driving to get there. Now, neither Jake nor me had ever driven that long of a distance before, so it was quite an adventure. We thought it would be cool to see some of the countryside before having to buckle down and study. The second day, we were driving through the mountains. It was a new experience too because I'd never done it. I think I felt sick a lot of the time, and it likely had to do with the elevation. However, towards the end of the day, something went wrong with the car. I was driving and it suddenly seized up. I had trouble even getting it off the road. Jake and I really couldn't figure out what to do with the car. It was beyond our expertise. We were also in a bad area as far as cell phone signals were concerned. We didn't know how far away we were from a gas station either. So we decided that one of us would hitchhike to a gas station and get some help. All of our belongings were in the car, and in the trailer to the car, so one of us had to stick with the car. Jake decided that he would be the one to go and find help. It took a while before our car picked him up. By that point, there wasn't much sunlight left, so I just sat in the driver's seat and waited. The sun went down. A state trooper at one point pulled up to the car, and I had a chat with him. I let him know what was going on, and that my friend had hitched a ride to try and get help. He took some information and said he would drive to the gas station to see if my friend had gotten there. Apparently, about 30 miles away, there was a gas station with a garage, and they could have towed our car for us. The officer asked how long I had been waiting, and I let him know at that point they had been over 3 hours. This would have been time enough for the car with my friend to go to the gas station, get the tow truck, and be back 3 times over. When the officer left, I was concerned. When the officer was gone a long time, I was more concerned. It was dark out, and for the first time I truly felt alone. It was an odd, unpleasant feeling, but I also sort of felt that I didn't want the officer to come back because I somehow knew it would be bad news. It was nearly 2 hours later that the officer came back. He had the tow truck with him, and I was relieved. I was sure that Jake was with them. However, when the officer came to my car, Jake wasn't with him. He informed me that no one had stopped at the gas station to get a tow. He also checked to see if anyone had seen the car with Jake in it. No one was able to pull it up from memory. The car was towed. While it was being worked on, I had to go to the police station and file a report. They had to call Jake's parents and let them know he was missing. I got a motel room in the area. I put off the trip because I was worried about my friend. I spent 4 days in that motel, freaked out and worried I would never see my friend Jake again. Finally, the police came to talk to me. The car that Jake had gotten a ride from was found in a grocery store parking lot. Jake was in the trunk. He was naked, beaten, bloody, and unconscious, but he was still alive. He was in a coma for about a month before he gained consciousness again, and even after that, it was weeks before he was able to recognize me or anyone, and even longer before he was able to recall what had happened. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the people that had picked him up had stolen the car they were driving. They robbed him of his money and credit cards and cell phone. It was actually due to the credit cards that they were eventually caught. There were 2 men, and one of them is still in jail. I didn't go to college that year, but I'm happy to tell you that the following autumn, Jake and I finally made it to college together. This time, however, we flew, and his parents came with us. We spent all 4 years roomed together and are still best friends to this day. Hitchhiking, for any reason, is a really bad idea. If Jake and I had waited, the officer would have eventually come upon us, and my friend would never have had this happen.
One of the most profound moments of my life came to me at the beginning of college. I was only 18 years old, and I was leaving home for the first time. I had been at the college grounds once before, but it was with my parents. I had left on a drive across the country in an old car and by myself for the first time ever, and I have to admit, I was both excited and terrified, more than I'd ever been in my entire life. I was 2/3 of the way into the trip when I ran into some car trouble. It was in a mountainous region, and I'm not too comfortable explaining where it is, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. I was too far from any town or exit, and I wasn't able to walk it out. I was too worried about what would happen if I did. My cell phone didn't even get any sort of signal, and I wasn't able to call for help. However, a small pickup truck pulled over, and 2 guys, who were a bit older than me, got out and helped. After about an hour of fiddling around with my car, they were able to get it running again. I offered to pay them for it, but they refused to accept anything. They just asked me to pay it forward. I assured them I would, and honestly, I fully intended to. But making a promise when you're in the situation isn't really as easy as keeping it when you're not. A full 2 years of college went by, and I didn't do anything that one might consider repayment of a good deed. I, in fact, largely forgot about it. Later on, I was driving home for Thanksgiving in the fall of my junior year in college. This, of course, took me right back through the same mountainous area. Driving through a rather lonely stretch of road, I noticed something up in the distance, off to the right side. A car had been pulled over, and someone had the hood up, working on it. Immediately, everything from the experience I had 2 years ago came flooding back. I remembered how grateful I was to the kindness of the 2 men who had helped me out. I also remembered my agreement to pay it forward. So, of course, realizing that it had been over 2 years and that I hadn't paid the favor back, I imagined how good I would feel about doing it. Still, with all the thought, I didn't decide right away. I was going downhill on the road, and the car was on the uphill side, right before I was going to hit the tunnel. I probably changed my mind back and forth before ultimately deciding to stop and help. The decision was only made seconds before I actually stopped the car. Rather than wait for me to get out of my car, the man immediately came from under his hood and began walking towards my passenger door. I found this odd, as I hadn't offered him a ride. I mean, I was going to since I didn't have any ability to work on his car for him, but it was just strange that he would automatically assume this. However, I still remember what I was trying to do here, and that was a good deed. So, I unlocked the passenger side door. As the man approached the door and was about to lift the door handle, I noticed some movement from the back of the truck. It looked to me like a second person, crouched down, had moved from the back of the truck to the back of my car. I mean, I wasn't completely sure, but it was enough to make me react and quickly lock the passenger side door right before the first man pulled up on the handle. Now, the first man hadn't expected to pull up on a locked handle. I guess he actually stumbled back a bit. I noticed that he had a gun in the waistband of his pants. The man behind my car had obviously expected the door to open. He had quickly moved over to the driver's side door, which I had locked just a moment before. He had a knife in his right hand. At this point, I saw the first man reach for his gun, but not before I hit the gas and took off past the two men and into the tunnel. I watched back as long as I could, and I did see them get into their car, and I kept expecting them to follow me, but they never came after. All I can think of is that they were scared of being caught with whatever the hell they were up to, and they turned and left in the other direction. I guess I was a bit too literal in my promise. I was simply asked to repay a good deed by paying it forward. I thought that this meant that I had to help someone else whose car was broken down. This almost got me hurt and maybe killed. When I got back to school, I volunteered to the soup kitchen for the rest of the year. I was able to do a good deed, which was, in fact, not life-threatening in any way.
Number 3. A wrong turn. This happened back when I was a teenager. My best friend turned 16, and his parents went and bought him a car. Well, once that happened, we were always out driving somewhere. I mean, if you had a car around when you were that age, you'd understand what I mean. Once you get a taste of that sort of freedom, it's like a drug, and you take it all the time. So this happened on a weekend night. We had gone and grabbed a bite to eat. Neither of us felt like going home. We lived in a suburban area, and we weren't really supposed to drive too far away. We also were not supposed to drive on the freeway. However, we were both bored teenagers, and we figured that there was no way that our parents would figure out what we had done. So we got on the freeway and thought we'd take it to the city. Our inexperience caused us to make a really big mistake, though. We drove into the city on the interstate. We spent a little bit of time there, and on the way back, unbeknownst to us at the time, we got on the wrong interstate. We kept expecting to get back to the area we lived in, but the further and further we drove, we came to the conclusion that we must have gotten on the wrong road. After discussing it a little bit, we decided to take the next exit and try to find a gas station or something to ask for directions back to the right area. So without thinking to look and see if there was a sign for a gas station at the next exit, we took the exit. There were no businesses right at the exit, but we didn't want to get back on the interstate, so we drove down the road, trying to find some place. I can't tell you how long we were driving down that road. We came across a few houses here and there. There were some stores and some small diners here and there as well, but it was late, and they were all closed. Both of us started to panic, not really sure what we needed to do. We eventually decided the best thing to do would be just to turn around, drive back to the interstate, find an exit with a gas station, and hope that we made it without running out of gas. So we turned on the next road, which was a very thin road. We figured we would get to the first driveway and then turn around in that. I tried to tell my friend just to pull out of the road, but he didn't want to do that. So our situation, which was bad in the beginning and kept getting worse, had just gotten worse again. The road was dark, thin, and didn't appear to have any driveways on it. We were both tense and scared. It was then that we saw something up ahead of us. There were two guys walking towards us on the side of the road. We thought this would be good, and that we would be able to ask them if there was a place to turn around. However, they froze when they saw us, and then, after a moment, ran off the road and into the woods, We were confused, but thought there could be many reasons for this, and we kept driving. We very soon saw an old pickup truck laying in a ditch on the side of the road. We drove by it, and when I saw it, I felt my chest tighten up a bit. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat. However, the person was not moving, and their head was lolled back. There looked to be blood on the door of the truck. We passed it, and eventually came to a driveway. We used it to turn around and drive back. When the truck on the side of the road came into view, we noticed that the two men who had run into the woods were at the truck. They saw us once again, but this time they ran off a lot quicker. When we drove up to the truck, it was much more obvious this time that whoever was in the driver's seat was dead. This time, the truck was on my friend's side of the car. When he noticed it, he just hit the gas and drove as quickly as he could. We got off the road, took the name of the road down, and drove back to the interstate. The next exit had a gas station. We went there and asked the attendant to call the police. The police had to call our parents, and we got chewed out big time for having driven so far away, and the man in the truck was indeed dead. And he wasn't in a car wreck. He was stabbed several times in the chest, and we had no doubt that the men who killed him were the two guys that twice ran away from us when they saw us coming. Even though the guys fled both times, it was still terrifying to think that they were so close to us on that thin, poorly lit road. We also wondered if they lived in the driveway we came across, but we don't know. All we do know is that a wrong turn can lead you somewhere you really, really never want to go. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I'd like to thank Formidable Escape for taking part in this collaboration with me. Please consider checking out their channel by using the link provided, and consider subscribing to their channel while there. If you'd like to read print versions of these stories, please check out the Killer Orange Cat subreddit in the link provided. You can also take a look around at the Killer Orange Cat merchandise store using the link provided in the description as well. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or using the icon of Ichigo, the cat, that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links provided in the description. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address provided in the description. My main requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not yet been read on any other YouTube channel. And please, whatever you do, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.